They used to say that WTO is an organization that's one country, it's one vote. But in fact, there has never been any vote, any kind of vote on WTO. It's all decided on basis of a consensus, but it's a passive consensus. If you don't say anything, they just assume you agree. So it's absolutely problematic on some areas, and also the bilateral talks are completely non-transparent. So it gives a very damaging room for all kind of practices in terms of blackmailing and arm twisting and bullying countries.
Unless there is any objection, I would now like to propose that the Ministerial Conference adopt the draft Ministerial Declaration in document WT/MIN bracket 05/W/3/Ref2 as amended to remove the square brackets in paragraph 11, as well as the textual amendments proposed in paragraphs 11 and 12. These amendments will be reflected in the final declaration, which will be circulated following this meeting. May I take it that this is agreeable to ministers?
Forget the magic wand, forget individual initiatives. In the tribe, only collective action counts.
But collective action in WTO terms refers to the Chinese security forces barring dissenting delegations from the final meeting. At the Doha Ministerial, the poorest nations simply could not afford to stay until the end of the extended conference. When developing nations refused to launch a new round, the WTO suspended the heads of delegation meeting until after the holdouts had left Qatar for home. In Hong Kong, there could be no chance that the agenda would be blocked. As for the barred delegations, they were not allowed press conferences after the meeting. And after the fact, no country can speak out unilaterally because of possible repercussions from the United States and Europe.
Thank you, Pascal. And now, I declare the 6th session of the Ministerial Conference of the WTO closed, and if you don't mind, I'll try my new gavel.
The poor countries felt confident that Venezuela and South Africa would fight the services provisions because they had criticized them indignantly for 3 days. But each country has its own agenda at the WTO, and as members of the G20, Venezuela, South Africa, and Cuba have more to gain as leading developing economies than as heroes for the poorest countries. Their silence at the heads of delegation meeting, along with the magical absence of some delegations, allowed the draft text to be passed. And so, with a wave of the Director General's magic wand and a bang of the Chairman's gavel, the Ministerial Conference is ended and the Doha Round has been completed, albeit with many issues to be resolved in Geneva. The key is that no single country can derail the round at this point. The result is, as Japan's minister dubbed it, a Christmas present to the world's economic system. One some say will provide unprecedented development opportunities, and that others say will be devastating to the world's poor.
The outcome has exceeded my expectation. We have pulled the rabbit out of the hat. The trick now is to make sure that it grows and multiplies. By that I mean all members of the World Trade Organization continue the hard work of Hong Kong over the next few months and close the gaps that still exist before we can ink the deal once and for all by the end of 2006. We have built a platform from which we can go forward to complete the Doha Development Agenda by the end of next year.
What has gone so fundamentally wrong in these 4 years? You launched the negotiations in Doha. You were there in Cancun, you were there in the framework agreement last year. Can you explain, what do you think about what really happened and what forced you to sort of think in these lines to bring about balance finally into trade negotiations?
Well, it's a complex question, Ravi, because commenting the past for me is commenting a previous life in trade, where the mandate I had, the position I had, was totally different from the one I have now. It's like changing a partner and spending a long time with a new partner discussing about before. You don't do a lot of that. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
The European Union is not going to be rushed into a deal just for the sake of reaching a deal. Better a properly cooked deal than an unambitious one.
Ambassador Portman, could you address the political difficulties that you might have at home in selling the sort of trade deal that's emerging? How difficult do you think it will be to get it through Congress, and what will you need to accomplish in the next 6 months to a year to make it acceptable at home, given the difficulty there have been in recent years in getting any trade deals through Congress?
Yeah, good question, Steve. I think two things. One, we sometimes forget this deal all comes together at the end. So, for instance, the undertakings we've made this week, with very few exceptions, would not come to pass unless there is an ultimate agreement. An exception would be aid for trade, which we've now made a commitment to. That's not conditioned upon the Doha Round coming to a successful conclusion. But the other agreements, you think about it, for the most part, are contingent upon that and tied to it. So the answer would be, it depends what it looks like at the end of the day.
Yes, Ambassador, have tomorrow? Ambassador, was the strategy going into this just to make everybody so tired that they sign off on anything? That's kind of the strategy at all these negotiations. This is the second round of liberalization, and it seems like this round has been more about the richer, industrializing, developing nations, kind of stepping up to the forefront and playing leadership roles on a continent-by-continent basis. How and why did the richest developing nations force the poorest nations to launch a new global constitution without any labor standards, human rights standards, or environmental standards?
It's a complex question.
Sure.
I think let me speak for South Africa. I think in South Africa's view, we recognize that there are benefits, that there are developmental benefits out of trade. We also recognize that the Uruguay Round, which concluded in 1994, has created a very strong international institution with rules governing international trade, and we want to strengthen that.
The final details of the Doha Round are to be decided between the developed world and the industrialized developing powers. The Hong Kong Declaration left the resolution of the agricultural subsidies debate to be resolved the following year at meetings in Brazil, India, and Europe. The WTO agreement that emerges will require congressional ratification, with 4 meetings of the EU, US, and Brazil and India representing the G20 in the spring of 2007. The United States Trade Representative is clearly pushing for the July fast-track deadline. But Ambassador Schwab has said that even without trade promotion authority preventing congressional amendment, she intends to finish the round by the end of 2007. After meetings with President Bush, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, European Commission President José Manuel Barroso claimed that he was encouraged that Congress would confirm the Hong Kong ministerial draft in 2007. And at a meeting in Geneva, Ambassador Schwab said that she was more confident than ever that Congress would complete the Doha Round on schedule.